Hi, everyone. I am coming at you live. I'm just going to plug in my headset here really quick. Give me just a second. Hello, and welcome to our Friday Conscious Co-Parenting Coach Dorsey Pruder coming at you live on a beautiful Friday afternoon from sunny California. I want to welcome everybody to the Alliance to Solve Parental Alienation. And if you have noticed some changes in the Alliance in the last few days, we have started to move things in a little bit of a different direction. So the Alliance is really focused on solutions for parents, children, and professionals that are dealing with the family dynamic known as parental alienation. And I have had a lot of questions and a lot of people commenting in the group concerned about us not using Richard Gardner's form or understanding of the pathology known as parental alienation. And even though the group is called the Alliance to Solve Parental Alienation, we use the terminology parental alienation because it's an urban term that people are familiar with. And if you're a parent who is experiencing this pathology, maybe you've just discovered it or you've been in the trenches for a long time, it's terminology that you know. But here's the truth. Parental alienation is not a diagnosable illness, mental illness. Okay. So it's an urban terminology that a lot of us use and we know it and we like it. However, when we go into a professional setting like the family court system or the mental health community, there is a lot of controversy about the term. And so I want to set the record straight here. And I know a lot of you follow Dr. Childress, and maybe a lot of you have heard Dr. Childress talk about it. I know he speaks in a lot of technical terms, and I'm going to use some of those terms today. But I really want to help everybody understand the importance of picking a lane. Why, if you are going into the family court system or you're going into therapy or into the world to solve this problem for your family, you have to have a model that's focused on solution and not a model that is taking you down into chaos and conflict. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history. So the history of parental alienation and the terminology was really born in the 80s when Dr. Richard Gardner was experiencing this phenomenon in his practice. So he had people coming in, families coming into his practice, and he was experiencing these symptoms and these things, and he was trying to figure out what it is. And so he created a new form of pathology, if you will, and called it parental alienation syndrome. So for years, Dr. Richard Gardner and his colleagues, they were trying to get parental alienation syndrome introduced into the DSM. So back then it was the 3, then it was the 4, and then it was the 5. We're in the 5 now. And the American Psychological Association creates the handbook, if you will, called the DSM. And we're at the 5th version of that. And all this time, almost 5 decades now, the bona fide experts, the experts with regards to parental alienation, have been trying to get parental alienation, Gardner's form, introduced as a new form of pathology. When the DSM-5 finally came out, or somewhere in between 4 and 5, the American Psychological Association said, no, it is not a new syndrome, and they didn't recognize it. So then the experts went out into the world saying, fine, we'll drop the syndrome, but it's parental alienation. And so they're trying to push forward this thing called parental alienation. And while we all know what the term is and that the term exists, it is not a diagnosable pathology. And so I am in the same boat as all of you when I went through my own divorce in 2003. A few years later, because my kids were young, I really discovered this thing called parental alienation, and what was it? And at that time there was really only Gardner's model and really trying to understand it, and it felt right to me, just like it does to many of you, because a lot of the symptoms, if you will, or the behaviors we recognize. It's like, yeah, that's what's happening. So it was easy to be lulled into this space of, yes, this parental alienation, it's a thing. This is what's happening. Why won't the AA accept it? Why is everybody fighting about it? Yes, it's real. So about 2000, so I started my business, the Conscious Co-Parenting Institute, in 2006, and I started doing this work. And then in 2008, if you follow Dr. Childress, you may have heard this already, but I'll briefly touch on his introduction to this pathology. So he had a family in his practice in 2008, and I believe it was a little boy was his patient, and he was experiencing all of these symptoms. He started doing his research. He found Gardner's stuff. He read it and said, what is this? This is garbage. We can define this already in already accepted psychological constructs that already exist, right? We don't need to create something new. Why would we create something new when there's an absolute way to assess and diagnose this family pathology? So Dr. Childress went to work in diving in, not out, into what was already accepted to say, well, what is this pathology? What is happening for the family? And then what do we do about it? So he, alongside of me, but on different tracks, we were doing our own work. So I was still using the Gardner model. That's all I knew. And Dr. Childress was over in this other container saying, that's not a real thing. Let's talk about what it actually is. Here's how you properly assess it. Here's how you diagnose it. While he was focusing on that track, I was actually just doing the work, right? I was actually solving the problem. I was helping families saying, well, wait a second, here's the problem. What's the solution? Let's bridge the gap. Let's recover children. And in 2013, Dr. Childress was attending a conference I was speaking at, and I was talking about this. It was a conference on parental alienation, and I started talking about the solutions and how this works and how to prevent it, and so on and so forth. And later that year, I took a class from Dr. Childress, and he was talking about assessment and diagnosis, and I'm like, finally, somebody gets it. And I was already in the camp of understanding the personality disorder, so borderline personality disorders and narcissistic personality disorders. And I was like, yeah, this is the pathology. This is the personality that's driving this behavior in the family. And then the underlying motivating drive is a little bit different. Narcissists were a fear of rejection, and the borderline is the fear of abandonment, right? So while that sounds like it's the same, it's slightly different. So, and that motivating drive shows just slightly different behaviors in how the pathogenic parent is showing up. So that's really the history of it. Once I discovered Dr. Childress's work, and I discovered and I really dug in, I was like, wow, he's really done the work. He's actually standing on the backs of giants. He's already using what's already accepted. He's not making anything up. It's not a new form of pathology. It's actually a diagnosable form of pathology. And so when we started to collaborate together in the end of 2013, really in 2014, this is before he wrote his book Foundations, we started looking at the whole family problem, right? Assessment, which leads to diagnosis, which leads to treatment or remedy solution. And he was working on his own solution. And when we started to collaborate, he said, what's the point? You've already solved it. We just need to bring this out into the world in a much bigger way. And that's when we started to collaborate. He wrote Foundations and talked about my High Road to Reunification program. And, things just exploded from there. Now, in all of that time, the last 6 years, really the last decade, but we'll talk about the last 6 years, which is when we've been collaborating. There's been a war, if you will, that has really broken out between Dr. Childress and the Gardnerians. And the Gardnerians are the bona fide experts, the people that remain experts as long as the Gardner model remains alive and well. And so I've been privy of this for a very long time. I have mediated some of these meetings. I've been in the inner circle of this, watching all of this go down, even before I knew Dr. Childress. And then as as a formerly alienated child, the desire to connect everybody and can we all just get along and everybody figure it out and can both exist? I've really come to the realization that, no, both models cannot exist at the same time, because one model, Gardner, is a new form of pathology that does not exist, right? So it needs to be this new form of pathology. And Dr. Childress says, no, it's not a new form of pathology. It's already accepted forms of pathology that can be assessed and diagnosed and treated. There's treatment for this, right? So both cannot exist. And the reason I share this with you is there's so much mixed information, and there's so many Facebook groups, and there's so much social media, and there's so many videos and so many people putting this stuff out, and it's confusing parents. And because Gardner's symptoms feel right, then parents fall into the trap and they get lulled to sleep that this Gardner model leads to a solution. It doesn't. It does not lead to a solution. Okay. I know. I've been doing this for a long time. When Gardner was the only model, that is what we did. And it was very, very, very hard to get a solution ordered or administered because there's so much controversy around this term parental alienation, and rightfully so. It is not a new form of pathology. It's already an accepted psychological construct. Okay. So I'm not going to beat that dead horse. I want to share with you, I'm going to go through with you the differences, because somebody was asking about it today and I thought, oh, how divinely held. And so perfectly timed what's actually happening right now and what I was going to talk about today. So I'm going to pull up the difference, right? And so while it may feel the same, I want to explain to you guys why it's different. So let me just pull up the diagnostic indicator checklist that Dr. Childress has put together that's anchored in already accepted constructs of psychology. So let me just say this again. While Dr. Childress put a checklist together, it's not new. He did not create a checklist of brand new symptoms or diagnostic symptoms. He created a checklist of already accepted diagnostic symptoms. There's a difference, okay? And then let me pull up what Bill Barnett and really Richard Gardner, Amy Baker, all of the Gardnerians. So if you follow Dr. Childress, this is what he calls them, the Gardnerians, these experts that and their list. Now they want you to believe that what Dr. Childress and they are doing is the same. It's not. They want you to believe that what Dr. Childress has brought forward is old wine and new skins. They've actually said that. They actually wrote an article about it. It's not. They want you to believe that they are the experts and that Dr. Childress and me, through association and the work that I do, that we're going to wither away and die on the vine if nobody ever speaks of us. It's like Voldemort, right, from Harry Potter. So the goal is that Dr. Childress and I go away, and this model, Gardner model of parental alienation, gets to continue to move forward. But the problem with that is that it doesn't bring a solution. You cannot diagnose parental alienation. Parental alienation, as we know it, is a mental health issue. It's a mental health crisis in your family. And it's been hijacked by the family court system. It's been hijacked to be used as a weapon, on both sides, to keep the family stuck in the pathology. The pathology is clever, right? Narcissistic borderline people are very clever. It's clever to create a new form of pathology, right? Look over here, while I abuse the children over here. And the domestic violence crowd, right? The people that are experiencing physical abuse or sexual abuse, the scars that are on the outside abuse, they're upset because of this new form of pathology called parental alienation that sometimes gets used as a reason to to keep the children, right, from the victim. I don't like to use that word, but from the recipient of, somebody who's being, somebody who's experiencing domestic violence. It's all domestic violence, okay? Physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse, those are all forms of violence, okay? They're all forms of intimate partner violence, and they can all be forms of child abuse, okay? They're all forms of abuse, period. Parental alienation is child psychological abuse, all right? And they're using, a parent is using the child as a weapon to continue intimate partner violence against the other parent. All right, that's what it is. But I want to talk, I could go on and on, but I really want to talk to you guys today about the difference in the two models, because a lot of people say it's the same, but it's not. So I'm going to start with Gardner. I'm going to start with, the 5-factor model, because I can't remember the guy's name. Sorry, I forgot your name. He asked me about it, and I said, well, it's great. I'm glad you're bringing this up, because I'm actually talking it on the Facebook Live today. And the benefit here is, the 5-factor model. I was already pulling it up to talk about it. And the benefit about all of this is that I'm going to do a side-by-side for you guys. And I'm going to talk about it, and then we'll put the two things in the link below in the comments so you can see the difference. But first of all, parental alienation in the 5-factor model. So Amy Baker wrote a book. This was one of my, it's not one of my first, it was my first introduction to her and her work. She wrote a book for adult children of alienation. I bought her book because I am an adult child, and it's really just a lot of stories of other people like me who shared their experience of alienation. And it was insightful in understanding like the mindset of what happens when we become adults, and there's really no solution for us. There was no solution when we were young. And, it's sort of an insight into what's going on for the child. And what I really gleaned from that was how frustrating it is to be a child of this family dynamic, and how many experts there are and nobody's solving it. I saw a lot of mental health providers when I was a kid, and none of them knew what was going on. And as soon as they started to kind of figure out what was happening with my mom, that was it. We stopped seeing that one and we went to another one. And it was very, very frustrating. And had the mental health providers actually done their job, had they actually understood the family dynamic, the pathology, we would have solved this in my childhood, right? But there was so much chaos and confusion. So the Gardner model talks about the 5-factor model. And the first thing is the child refusing contact. If that doesn't exist, then it's not alienation in that model. And here's the problem with that. A lot of kids aren't refusing contact. They're actually going on their parenting time. A lot of kids that are impacted by the family pathology are going with the targeted parent. They may be holding themselves up in their room. Maybe the pathogenic parent is loading up their backpack with food. They're not accepting food. But they're going on their parenting time. So what happens with this first thing is that the professional community says, well, it can't be alienation because they're actually going on their time. It must be something else. And know that this is happening because I work with thousands of people, and we see this time and time and time again. And the interpretation of this is that if the kid is going on the parenting time, it can't possibly be parental alienation. They didn't meet the first criteria. So the court is now like, I don't know what it is. And so now they look at the targeted parent again and say, well, there must be something wrong with you. Well, we don't understand. Well, what have you done? Game over. Game over, guys. That will not give you a solution. Okay. It won't. And I know you may be saying, yes, but this about all the other stuff applies. No. Okay. You will not get a solution because the family court system, if they're looking at this and they've heard the terminology of parental alienation and they're using this model, you're done. You're not going to recover your kids using this. Okay. Did the rejected parent and child have a positive relationship in the past? I've yet to come across a case where alienation is involved, right? Where a child is experiencing an emotional cutoff from a parent where there wasn't a relationship with the parent before, okay? It's not, you're not experiencing an emotional cutoff from your child if you didn't have a relationship with your child. And I don't really have people coming into our world and into our practice and saying, I had a relationship and now I don't, and that isn't true. Okay. It doesn't happen. It may happen. There may be a very finite number, but it's silly, right? We should assume that all parents and children, if there's an intact relationship and they had a relationship, that already exists, right? So that's not really the foundation that we should be using. We should be using, like, were you around, right? Are you a parent? Were you a parent in the child's life? 99.99999% of the time, if you're in this space, you're looking for a solution, you have a relationship with your kid, right? That's just, even abusive parents, right? Even parents who don't realize what they're doing, they have a relationship with their kid. So again, now you've got these two criteria that you've got to meet in order for it to be parental alienation. Then the third thing is there any abuse or neglect by the rejected parent? Should be checking for all abuse and neglect by both parents all the time. So if there is if the child is experiencing an emotional cutoff, of course, we should be assessing for that period, right? That should be the first thing we should be assessing. That shouldn't be number 3. It should be number 1, right? We have two parents, they have a relationship with the child. One is experiencing an emotional cutoff. The question we should be asking is, who's causing it? Mom, dad, or both? Sometimes it's both parents, right? Sometimes it's both parents. And oftentimes it's both parents, but one is doing 90% and the other is doing 10 because the targeted parent is responding or reacting in a way that's causing things to get worse and not better, okay? Is the favored parent engaging in many of the 17 alienating behaviors? This one's heavy, you guys. This one's hard. And the reason is they're probably doing that, but how do we know? And if you're dealing with a pathogenic parent, it's really hard to put your finger on the pathology and the other parent, the behavior, because they're sneaky. They're really good at it. And so now you're chasing the ever elusive, very clever pathogenic parent down the rabbit hole. And you're trying to prove the other parent is bad. You're trying to prove that the other parent is doing these things. And it's like trying to hold water in your hands. It is. It's like trying to hold water in your hands. So now you're diving down the rabbit hole. And who decides? So now you're dealing with a mental health provider who's trying to diagnose this thing called parental alienation, which isn't an authentic diagnosis. And they're looking at the 17, alienating tactics, right? And they're trying to figure out if they're doing it or not. And how many people have a pathogenic parent who says, it's not me, it's the child. I want the child to have a relationship with them, but, I can't force them. And I'm not saying anything bad. I'm not bad. I'm not doing anything bad. I really want the child, but but they need to fix the relationship. The other parent needs to fix it. It's not me, it's them. You're done. That's just, it's game over. Okay. And the mental health provider gets hooked into that story and they're looking for a confirmatory bias, right? Like, oh, well, then let me see. What are you doing? What are you doing? What is this parent doing? Oh, that parent's not bad mouthing. So they're not doing it. So it can't be alienation. Game over. Game over. Okay. Does the child exhibit many of the behavioral manifestations of parental alienation? That's these other things. A campaign of denigration, right? Weak and frivolous or absurd rationalizations. None of the 17 or the 18 behavioral manifestations, these are not diagnostic criteria. Okay. They're not diagnostic criteria. So it creates a problem because you can't diagnose these things and you're leaving it up to a clinician to try to figure it out. Well, does this meet this criteria? There's no inner rater reliability of the criteria. Okay. No inner rater reliability of the criteria. So the person assessed is trying to figure it out. Well, I think it's what this is, but what does it really mean? Weak and frivolous and absurd rationalizations. What does that mean? Okay. There's no operational definition of that. And so they're going to be looking, and because there's, for something, but they're not really sure what they're looking for. So now it's loosey-goosey, and they may be seeing this, but they go back to their 5 factors and they're like, yeah, but little Johnny is still going on your parenting time. So even though the parent has some of these behaviors and maybe the child is doing these, but they're still going on their parenting time. So it can't be alienation. I don't know what it is. right? You must have done something. See? Loop, 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 loop. You keep ending up back into the same spot. Even the people who claim to be experts, right? Now they're also looking for confirmatory bias. They're looking for something to confirm what they believe to be true, right? They believe to be true. Some of these things are similar to the actual diagnostic criteria, like absence of guilt, for example. That is a diagnostic symptom of a borderline personality disorder pathology, okay? Narcissistic borderline personality disorder is an actually accepted pathology, right? It's an actual accepted construct by the American Psychological Association. It's an actual psychological construct. It can be diagnosed, okay? So I want to jump to Dr. Childress's diagnostic checklist, and you may or may not have seen this, and we have a lot of new people in our group, so I don't know if you've seen it or not, but I'm going to talk about it. So 2014, 15, Dr. Childress, I think it's 15, Dr. Childress actually created a diagnostic checklist to make it simple for mental health providers to understand that there's a clinical diagnosis for this thing called parental alienation, right? There's an actual terminology for it. It's called child psychological abuse. So does the child meet the diagnostic criteria? So the first is an attachment system suppression. So the child's symptoms evidence a selective and targeted suppression of the normal range functioning of the child's attachment bonding system, right? The motivational drive towards one parent, the targeted or the rejected parent, in which the child seeks to entirely terminate that relationship with the parent. So the child initiated the cutoff in the relationship with the child in a normal range and affectionately available parent. So see how it feels and sounds the same, except this is appropriate and proper terminology. The nice thing about the diagnostic criteria is it present fully? Is it a sub-threshold, right? Is the child going back and forth? They're emotionally cutting off, but they're still involved. Or is it absent? Is the child going back and forth and they're not rejecting the parent, right? They have a normal range relationship. And then the second criteria there is the parenting practices of the targeted parent. You assess those for broadly normal range with due consideration, right, given to the wide spectrum. So wide spectrum of acceptable parenting that is typically displayed in normal range families, right? So you can create the floor by reviewing the evidence, interviewing the family members, and this is for mental health providers, looking at what's the baseline for this family, what's normal in this family. And normal range parenting includes the legitimate exercise of parental prerogatives, okay? Establishing desired family values through the parental expectations for desired child behavior, normal range discipline practices, normal range. We have to be assessing normal range for these families. What is normal range? Dr. Childress created a parenting practices rating scale, an actual checklist. It keeps it simple. This is what is in normal range. Is the parent behaving this way? Now, let's say there's a breach in the relationship. Let's say the parent has done something. It is not normal for children to reject parents. It's not normal. Children will ally with abusive parents. Okay, they ally with abusive parents and they will reject normal range parents. And the reason they do this, they choose the normal range parent to do the work because they know that parent is going to learn the skills to elevate the family out of the pathology and recover the family system. Okay. Children ally with physically abusive parents, children ally with sexually abusive parents, children ally with psychologically abusive parents, children ally with abusive parents. You can speak to anybody that works in the child abuse arena, and they will tell you that children will cover for their abusive parents. And the reason that they do that is the attachment system is the motivational system of love and bonding in a child. If a child rejects a parent, it's in our DNA. They get eaten by predators. Dr. Childress talks about this all the time. So pay attention, right? The reason you want to focus on proper terminology is because you want the mental health providers serving your family to understand what they're looking at. But if we're looking over here at this loosey-goosey parental alienation model that's not accepted, or the 17 alienation tactics, right? Looking at what is this? Does it exist? You're stuck. they're going to go back to the 5 factors. If they don't see it, they're done. You're done. Okay, you're done. So you want to focus on what's actually accepted. So are there similarities? Yes, there are similarities. There are similarities. The difference is what is an accepted construct of psychology and what is not. Okay, what is diagnosable? What is not, right? You need a diagnosis. Assessment leads to diagnosis, leads to solution or treatment, okay? Assessment leads to diagnosis, leads to solution or treatment, period. If you're seeing a mental health provider, or if you're a mental health provider seeing families and you don't have a diagnosis, one, you're practicing beyond the bounds of your competency, or your mental health provider is practicing beyond the bounds of their competency. You must assess. Mental health is a health issue, okay? It's a health issue in the mental health in the family system, okay? You must assess what's going on to diagnose what's happening so that you can properly treat what's happening. Traditional talk therapy does not solve this problem. Traditional play therapy does not solve this problem, okay? It is a whole family problem. It requires a whole family solution, which requires a proper assessment, which requires a proper diagnosis, which requires a proper treatment plan, right? I hope that's making sense to you guys. The second criteria on the diagnostic indicator checklist is a personality disorder traits. We are talking about the child, okay? Children cannot be diagnosed with personality disorder. So if the child has the fingerprinting of a personality disorder, then the question is, who's causing it? Is it mom, dad, or both? Believe it or not, we have a lot of cases, a lot of family situations where both parents are pathogenic. Listen, it happens, okay? This isn't about elimination. It's about integration and awareness. We need to understand what is happening so that we can fix it. We can solve it. So is it mom, dad, or both? Who's causing the pathology in the child? Okay. Both parents could have a pathology, but one parent's pathology could be activated by the divorce. It could be a borderline mom whose pathology is activated by the abandonment she feels from the divorce. So she's reenacting her family trauma, right? She's reenacting her childhood trauma. She's elevating the child into the family hierarchy. Now it's mom and child in a cross-generational coalition. That means, in generations, mom and dad are from the same peer group. When it's a cross-generational coalition, we're elevating the child from a different peer group into the parent peer group. And we're denigrating, we're dropping the other parent down into the child position, right? So now we have a mom in this, my example, a mom and a child up here in the family hierarchy. And then the dad in this situation is down here. We can't do that. We must keep parents in the parental role. It's a generational thing and it's appropriate. Parents are always parents and children are always children, okay? So if we have parental different deficiencies, we must educate parents. We must up-level our parenting. So in this family dynamic, it requires this parent down here that's been relegated down to the child position to become ninja. You've got to learn the skill so you can elevate yourself back into the family hierarchy so you can lead your family out of the pathology. Now, if you're treating mental health provider at the family court, if your lawyers, if nobody understands what's happening, they don't understand that that's what's going on, they don't know what to do about it. So they do nothing. If they're looking over here at these 17, alienation tactics and do the 5 factors, are they present, all that stuff, it's confusing. It's, well, which is right? And so you're done, you're stuck, you're not solving anything. So the 5 criteria in the personality disorder traits, and this is 2A, are grandiosity. So this is the child's display of grandiosity towards you, the targeted parent, right? The inappropriately elevation of the family hierarchy, the child in the family hierarchy. The absence of empathy towards the parent, right? Towards the normal range or the rejected parent. The entitlement the child displays really in this over-empowered, the sense that the child expects all of their wishes to be, granted by you, even though they're treating you terribly. And the haughty and arrogant attitude of that child towards you and maybe even the extended family. And then the splitting pathology, these are all accepted constructs, okay? All accepted constructs of psychology. Could we come over to the 17 alienation tactics and find these in there? Yes, we can. Or the child's manifestations of the behaviors in the child, can we find them in there? Yeah, we can. The problem with that is that those are not diagnosis or diagnosable criteria. So that's just, it's left up to the clinician to figure that out. Over here on Dr. Childress' side of the aisle, we're talking about diagnostic criteria, right? Things that are already accepted. Does the child behave this way? Yes, right? What are the symptoms of that? What is the child doing? Okay, so one is vague and hard to understand. One is very clear and already accepted. Now, the other criteria of the diagnostic symptom number 2 is to be the phobic anxiety towards a parent. There's no such thing, none. There's no such thing as a mother phobia or a father phobia, okay? There's no such thing. So if a child displays this persistent and unwarranted fear of you that is cued either by the other parent or is cued by you being present, right? Or provokes an anxiety response for no reason, then we have an issue, right? We have a diagnostic criteria. So now we have to dig in. As a clinician, you should be assessing this situation. Is there something there? Is there something there? Or is this just a fixed and false belief this child has? This child has a delusion, an encapsulated persecutory delusion about the targeted parent. They don't feel this way about anything else. It's just this one parent. If all 3 of those symptoms are present, then we have a diagnosis of child psychological abuse. Okay, this is a diagnosis. And with all forms of abuse, we must protect all abused children all of the time. So what happens if all of the 3 symptoms aren't present? What if we have some of the symptoms, but not all of the symptoms? Well, the truth is, even if we don't have all of the symptoms, we still need to resolve the issue. Okay, so let's say we have a situation where the family is moving into that direction, but they're not quite there yet, right? They're not fully, the child isn't fully alienated. What do? Right? Well, we solve the problem. We have to solve the problem, because if we don't solve the problem, the child will eventually escalate into a full emotional cutoff. And so this gets into what Ed Tronick talks about, which is the breach and repair sequence, right? We need to, if there's a breach in a parent-child relationship, we need to repair it quickly, not, years or months or weeks or whatever. We need to repair it immediately. So we don't wait around for the child to be comfortable and ready. No, we fix the situation by repairing the breach in the relationship. Okay, there's a couple people. Is this being recorded for viewing later? Yes, it'll be recorded here in the Alliance. So if you want to see this later, you can come back into the Alliance, click on the videos tab, and you'll find it. Oh, somebody already said that. Somebody already answered. Okay, so the importance of the difference in the 2 models is one leads to a diagnosis, and a diagnosis leads to a treatment, right? A remedy, a solution, and one does not. Now, let me talk about what happens. Let me just say this about Dr. Childress' checklist. Dr. Childress also has associated clinical signs. So with the checklist, the 3 diagnostic indicators, those are already vetted. Those are already peer-reviewed. They're not made up by Dr. Childress. They're already accepted psychological constructs from the American Psychological Association. Okay, those are already peer-reviewed and accepted. Okay, does that make sense? Already peer-reviewed, already accepted. Now, in his diagnostic checklist, he has what's called 12 associated clinical signs. These are things that we frequently see in these cases. It adds a little extra layer of validity. Are these things happening? And then let's look at some of the criteria, right? The associated clinical signs. Are these things present? Like the use of the word force. Almost 100% of the time, we hear the pathogenic parent and the child use the word force. Well, I want them to go, but what do you want me to force them? I can't force them, or the child, if only if you force me, you're forcing me to have a relationship with you. This child who had a relationship. Now, even if the targeted parent, even if you, the chosen parent, have done something, the children want the behavior to stop and they want somebody to figure it out so that they can bond with you. Okay. They want to rebond with the parent that there is a breach in the relationship with. So some of the other associated clinical signs, one that we almost always see is associated clinical sign 2, where we're enhancing or elevating the child in the family hierarchy, that the child should make the decision on when they see the parent. When the child is ready, we need to listen to the child. We need to advocate for the child's testimony. Now, I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and the reason that we don't do this is we as adults and professionals in this community and parents, we need to be advocating properly for the child. And a child's voice is only appropriate when it's the authentic voice of the child. But if we don't assess for what's happening in this family dynamic, then we aren't actually bringing an authentic child into the courtroom. We're actually having an inauthentic child. And there's nothing worse we can do to a child than placing the child in the courtroom in the middle of the spousal conflict to have to decide to eliminate a parent. We should not be eliminating. We should be integrating. Always. We should be figuring out what's going on. So we educate, right? We rehabilitate, we reintegrate. It's not about elimination. It's about integration. Even the child protection responses, when a child is being beaten or even sexually abused, believe it or not, the protocol is to educate and rehabilitate and reintegrate. That's the protocol. That's the child protection protocol. Protect the child, recover the parent, recover the child, right? Educate, rehabilitate, reintegrate, okay? I don't know why the family court system, well, I do know why, they've gone off into the wilderness. And now there's all this back and forth, this argument about this thing called parental alienation when we shouldn't be fighting about it. It's child psychological abuse, period. What is happening? Who's causing it? What do we do about it? We need to fix it, okay? We don't leave families in a breached relational state. We repair breaches in relationships. Some of the other things that we see almost 100% of the time, we see the exclusionary demand. I don't want you to go to my graduation. Don't come to my soccer game. It's not normal for children to not want to receive love and support from a parent. It's not normal. Even a terrible parent, they still want you to love. They will twist themselves into a pretzel to try and get you to pay attention to them, right? So a child saying, I don't want you here, something's going on there. If the diagnostic symptoms are there, this associated clinical sign, these confirm that, right? They give extra validity to what's actually being diagnosed. So kind of like you can say, well, that's like the 17 or those, or the 8. Yes, except for Dr. Childress's model is a diagnostic model based on already accepted constructs of psychology. Okay. Gardner's is not. You cannot diagnose using that model. And so without a diagnosis, you can't get a proper treatment. All right. The reason that there's so much backfighting and infighting and, this desire to keep this old model, and even parents fall into it. You fall into it because it feels right to you because you know these symptoms, right? The reason they hang on to it is this desire to be an expert. They've been an expert in this pathology called parental alienation for so long that the moment that everybody accepts an actually already accepted construct of psychology model, a diagnostic model, they're no longer experts. It just goes away because that's a non-thing. It's a non-issue and they have to figure it out. And some of these people have been in this industry for 40 years, right? They've been building their entire career and written books and all kinds of stuff on this made-up pathology called parental alienation. And that doesn't serve you. So I'm just going to call a spade a spade. It's just the truth. You cannot bring both into the courtroom. And here's why. Gardner's model is what the naysayers, what the pathology wants to use to actually destabilize you from recovering your children. And they love to say it's junk science and it's a made-up pathology. And now it's a red herring. That's a red herring argument in the family court system. Even though it's true, most people fall down that path and they argue, no, it is happening. And look at this is what you're doing. And this is what's happening. And da-da-da-da. And you're now in a convince and resist dance in the family court. And the judge is like, well, I don't know who's right and who's right and who's wrong. Let's get a guardian. Let's get a minors counsel. Let's have a parenting coordinator. Everybody has a lawyer. Let's get another lawyer for the child. You got all this stuff going on and nobody knows what's happening and nobody's following a diagnostic criteria or process. It's just noise. It's a red herring argument to take you off of what's actually happening. Your child is being psychologically abused. We protect all abused children all of the time, and then we recover the family. We educate, rehabilitate, reintegrate, okay? Period. But when we're over here arguing parental alienation is junk science, it's just noise. It's noise. Now all the experts come in. You got to pay them a lot of money to be an expert on this thing called parental alienation, and they're going to go in and they're going to say whatever they need to say, and then it's going to be a hired gun, right? And then the other side is going to come in and say, no, you're an abuser. It's this, it's that. Noise, 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 noise. He said, she said, back and forth. Nobody's diagnosing. Noisy, expensive, no solution. Oftentimes the judges, how many of you have done this? And the judge says, I don't know what's going on. I got to have somebody else figure it out. Drop a comment. Let me know. How many of you have had this happen? How many of you have been arguing parental alienation in the family court system and the judge is like, I don't know what's happening? Or even the mental health provider. Maybe the mental health provider is saying it's not alienation because the child is going back and forth, right? I don't know how many of you are experiencing that, but that happens, right? It happens a lot. And so then you're now stuck with this thing called parental alienation, but nobody believes it, and then you can't diagnose it. We need to speak in a unified voice, and here's why. A unified voice solves the problem, okay? Speaking in a unified voice solves the problem, not just for you, for everyone. Speaking in a unified voice solves the problem for everyone. And if your desire is to only solve the problem for you, it's not going to be solved. Okay, we need to speak in a unified voice so we can solve the problem for everyone. And we speak in a unified voice on the accepted constructs of psychology, what already is diagnosable. We must diagnose all abuse all of the time, period. Okay? When you go into the family courtroom and you try to bring both in, some people do this. Some people don't listen to me, or they don't listen to Dr. Childress, or they get hijacked and they think, well, I'm just going to bring it all because if I bring everything, they're not going to be able to argue this or that and da 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 da. It creates confusion, and a confused mind doesn't buy. So if you think about the judge, the judge is like the buyer, right? The judge is buying what you're putting down. So if the story is confusing, if the judge doesn't know what it is, then they're not going to buy. They're not going to solve it because they don't know what they're doing. Judges are lawyers, okay? Judges are lawyers. They're trained in practicing law, period. Okay, they're trained in practicing law, and we're asking them to solve a mental health crisis in the family. And they're seeking advice from forensic psychologists who don't know what they're doing. They're not coming to a diagnosis. They're not diagnosing. They're actually trained to not diagnose the pathology, even if they see the pathology, even if they use the MMPI too, even if they're using all the instruments to come to the pathology. They'll talk all about it. And he said this and she said that. And oh my God, and this and that. And then I talked to the kids and they all did all these things and blah, 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 blah. And oh yeah, never mind. I'm not going to do anything because I'm not trained to diagnose. Well, I don't want to diagnose. We can't label anything because that's just kind of mean. And, I don't really want to label a parent. And so they do nothing. Round and round and round and round and round you go, okay? And where that stops, nobody knows. You've got to have a diagnosis. So assessment using accepted psychological constructs leads to diagnosis, leads to solution, okay? Treatment or solution. Hi, Beverly. Do these same APA standards apply to the LCSWs or do they have their own set? I believe that the American Psychological Association is like the big kahuna that creates the DSM-5 and it trickles down from there. So I'm not exactly sure if counselors can diagnose, I'm pretty sure that they can, or they can at least assess situations and then refer out for a diagnosis if they're not allowed to diagnose. But the manual applies to everyone. And let me say this here, child abuse is child abuse. So everybody at all levels working with children are mandatory reporters. So mental health at all levels, they're mandatory reporters. Okay. So if it's child abuse, they're a mandatory reporter. Unfortunately, the Child Protective Services, they're just not trained. And so they don't have the skills to actually properly assess. I mean, it would be great is if we could get this assessment in the hands of Child Protective Services so that the people on the front line actually can see the diagnostic criteria, that the symptoms, right, in the child. If we're trying to chase the ever elusive pathogenic parent down the rabbit hole, holding water in your hands, can't do it, right? We focus on the symptoms of the child. Dr. Childress has nailed it. I've been doing this a long time. His process works. Following a proper assessment, looking at the symptoms of the child, it works. They just show up. We look at evidence. We tag evidence in our program called Custody Resolution Method, and we look at hundreds of thousands of pieces of evidence. We look at a lot of evidence, and we know when the pathology is present. The evidence speaks for itself, and it's just there, so evident. We are even able to tag for encapsulated persecutory delusions in evidence, which is really, hard to see. We can see it. You're welcome, Beverly. Let's see. Somebody said, not fighting this in court yet. My son's psychologist seems to get it, but we are only just starting to delve into therapy. Alienator has resisted therapy. Of course. I'm struggling to justify putting the whole family through the court process, given all the issues you are raising with right now. Exactly. My advice to you would be to download the diagnostic indicator checklist, get away from the language of parental alienation, get into the language of child psychological abuse, ask the therapist who's seeing the family to look at the symptomology in the children. Now, when you're speaking to mental health providers, let me just give you a word of advice. Don't go into the mental health provider's office and say you're doing it wrong, right? How you speak to them is critical. Nobody wants to be told that they're incompetent. Nobody wants to be told they're doing it wrong. How dare you tell me how to do my job? They're going to dig in their heels. And I say this to parents all the time, and they don't listen. And then the next thing you know, they're upset because the mental health provider is saying they're narcissistic because that's how they're coming off. That's how you come off when you're telling the mental health provider how to do their job. So you want to be suggestive. Hey, I found this on the internet. What do you think about this? I found this diagnostic indicator checklist. I'm actually observing this. Can you take a look? Have you heard of Dr. Childress? Have you read his book, Foundations? It's big. His book is big. A lot of people don't want to read it. He's wordy and repetitive for a reason, right? So keep it simple for them. Give them simple things. Hey, I'm starting to notice these behaviors in my children. What do you think? If you can stay out of the family court system, please stay out of the family court system. If you can't avoid it, make sure you schedule a call with us. We can talk strategy with you, and the best way to go into that space prepared versus going in blindly. A lot of times people rely on their family law attorney to tell them what to do. And really the truth is your lawyer works for you. They're like your employee, if you will. And your job is to explain to everybody on your team, here's what's happening. Here's what I want. Here's how I want to get it. Here's how we got to where we are right now. And here's where I want to be, right? If you just give all this stuff to your lawyer, you're now asking a legal professional to try and figure out this family pathology. You're asking them to solve a mental health crisis in your family. The law should be used to understand the mental health crisis, and the law should be used to help you get out of that by using the law, not solving it by using mental health in family law. Okay, you wrap the law around what's happening to get the solution. Hi, Carolyn. Thank you, Dorsey, for this incredibly clear-cut explanation of exactly what is transpiring. Grateful. Thank you. It is so confusing, and people get so confused, and it's really annoying to me because it's actually very frustrating because I'm a parent and I'm a kid of this, and I'm a professional working in this space, and I get the old model. I do. And people don't understand, right? And the people that operate on they don't want you to they don't want you to know. And it's very annoying because trying to do both, it doesn't serve you. So I don't understand why, if there's something better and something that we can actually use, and there's tools we can actually use right now, and we can solve it right now, why isn't everybody doing it? And, as a consumer myself, like, why are we doing that? Can we just use a model that works? And, it's the pathology. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's infecting the professional community. It infects the family court system. It infects the mental health community. The wrong mental health providers are in the family court system. It's infected with pathology, infected with it. Ditto to the previous comment. Thank you. Thank you for the advice, Dorsey. It makes a lot of sense. You're welcome. My pleasure. I hope you guys got a lot of value out of this Facebook Live. It'll be here. We'll leave it in the Facebook group. I just want to close out because I've been talking for an hour. I'm going to talk 15 minutes on Facebook on Fridays, and this subject and really understanding the clarity of this is really, really important. And to be able to say, okay, pick a lane. I'm going to pick a lane. I'm going to pick a lane that brings me to solution. I'm going to pick a lane that recovers my kid. Children. The truth is, you as the chosen parent, you have all the power. It doesn't feel like it because you're playing in a system that is delusional, right? But you actually have all the power. If you pick a lane and you focus on what you can do, right? The things that you can do to recover your children, you will recover your children. You don't need a high road, right? You don't need me. You can actually do it. Your kids don't care about me. They don't care about Dr. Childress or Gardner or all the experts, blah, 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 blah. They don't care about any of that noise. They care about you. They want you. They love you. And they want to be lifted out of this family pathology. They don't want to be elevated in the family hierarchy. They want to be kids. They want to enjoy their childhood. It doesn't last very long. They want you to fix this for them so they can be kids. They love their pathogenic parent. Their pathogenic parent is just a child, an abused child who became an adult. And that child is now trapped in an adult body. And they want somebody to solve it for them too. They want them to solve it. They want this to end too. They act out in the transgenerational trauma and in the cross-generational coalition, right? They elevate the child up because they want everybody to fix it. They want somebody to pay attention and solve it, okay? That's why it's happening. So I hope this was helpful. I hope as we go into the 4th of July weekend that everybody has a wonderful weekend. If you're seeing your children and they're being turds on your parenting time, which happens, make it easy for them to be with you. No pressure. Be that soft place for your children to land. Know that they love you deeply, deeply love you. They're grateful that you're learning the skills and that you're here. They're grateful that you are showing up. Show up. Show up, show up. If there's an opportunity for you to watch your kids play sports or do something, go, even if they tell you not to go, unless there's a protective order in place. Don't break the law, but go, show up, let them know that you're there. Doesn't mean you have to show up and make a scene and all that. Just show up. Do you have a video on reunification with adult children of this mess? Yes, it's on our website, consciouscoparentinginstitute.com. And if you go there, there's a tab that says resources. It's called Reunited. So we have a free class. I believe it's maybe an hour and a half or two. It's long. I'm a long-winded person too. It's a 7-step process on how to reunite with your adult alienated children. So you can do the free class, implement the steps, and do that. We also have a paid course that is the Reunited. We go deep into each one of the steps. So if you have adult kids, there is a solution, and feel free to take the free class. You can watch it as many times as you want, and it's a really, really powerful class. It was created for you. So if you have adult kids, please go and watch that. The website again is www.consciouscoparentinginstitute.com, and my team will pop the link here in the comments so that you guys have it. And the adult class is called Reunited. So go to the resources tab, click I think it's called Reunited, or you'll figure it out. It says something about adult children. Sorry, I have a team of people that put stuff up there. I can't remember, but it's a really great class, and you're welcome. It's my pleasure. And so happy 4th of July weekend, everyone that's in America. And I'm glad that you're here. Stay close. If you've noticed some of the changes in the Alliance, we are now approving posts. So we've taken a lot of the noise out of the Alliance and really focusing on solutions. So if you have something that's worked for you and you want to share it with the group, please do so. Post. We're approving posts. We're sharing all kinds of great things in the Alliance, and we've removed a lot of the noise and a lot of the cruelty. I mean, this is a tough pathology. We're trying to be very mindful about what's happening in the Alliance to solve parental alienation and really bringing forward the solutions for you guys wherever you are in the process. So if you've implemented something, please share a post. Let us know how it worked and why it worked, and where you are at in the process. If you have any questions, ask, post questions. Let us know what's going on for you and what would serve you the most. I'll be coming here every Friday and even more during the week on Facebook Lives as things come up. If I miss a Friday, it's because I'm doing a reunification. That would be really the only reason I'm in a high road. But other than that, I'll be here every Friday at 2 Pacific. And for those of you that don't know, I just launched a podcast with one of my coaches and very dear friends, best friends, Sal DeGuardia. We launched this morning. So if you haven't seen that, it's a lot of fun. Sal and I are very playful with each other. He's just a lot of fun. He's a dad who's reuniting with his kids, and he's also one of our coaches. And so we're bringing some joy to you guys with the podcast as well. Also stay close, because if you notice in our header, we are getting ready to launch a new class in a few weeks that you can only get here at the Alliance. So I just want to say that if you stay close, you'll start seeing some of these shifts in this group on what we're bringing forward. There are a lot of Facebook groups. There's a lot of people posting a lot of stuff and, and, you could do that too. Here, we're focused on the solution. Okay. So we're going to be really seeing a lot of things changing, of providing solutions, things that you can be doing right now. Let's see. Oh, that's my team. So with that, happy 4th of July and enjoy your time. Go out. Don't hole yourself up in the house. Really find joy in your life, even if you don't have your children right now. What I do know about alienated kids, they're always connected with you. So focus on your unconditional love for them. Just visualize the golden cord of unconditional love, the unbreakable bond from your heart to theirs as you're going out and enjoying yourself. Your kids want you to enjoy yourself. Your kids want to know that you're taking care of you. Your kids want to know that you're happy. Your kids want to know that you're okay. Okay. So they have to manage the emotions of the other parent. So don't make them manage yours. You manage yours. Okay. Let them know you're okay by being okay, by living in the healthy space of self-love, and do the things you need to do to take care of you so that when they fold back in, you're that beautiful, unconditionally loving, soft place to land. So thank you so much for listening. Happy Friday, happy 4th, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.